Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian. Today I want to talk to you about integrity with a story that just came from my mom this week. My parents were visiting last week, and one morning while I'm doing devotions with my son, we're in John chapter 1, and it's this story of some of the disciples first meeting Jesus. Let me just give you a little piece of it. Starting in verse 45, it says, Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, We have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. Nazareth, exclaimed Nathanael. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Come and see for yourself, Philip replied. As they approached, Jesus said, Now here's a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity. I'm not sure why Nathanael had this negative view of Nazareth. I don't know what Nazareth meant. Apparently, it was like Hillbilly Hicktown or something, but no one expected anything good to come out of Nazareth, or at least Nathanael certainly didn't. But what's special is that he wasn't just so self assured in his opinion, in his perception of what Nazareth and apparently everyone from Nazareth was like, but he came along with Philip. He came to examine because Philip said, Well, come and see. And he did. And as soon as they're approaching, the first thing Jesus says is to call him out and commend him for his integrity. And he goes on to point out that, like, he knew about Nathanael way back before Philip called him. He's sitting under a fig tree, and I don't know what any of that stuff means. But it certainly means that Jesus already knew Nathanael. He knew his hangups. He knew his prejudice. And he recognized that Nathanael pushed past that and came to investigate, to see for himself. And he celebrates that as integrity. He calls him a man of complete integrity. That's the part my mom pointed out that it really stuck out to her, that this is Jesus celebrating someone for their integrity. Can you imagine being that guy? Imagine being Nathaniel's, son or grandson or descendant somewhere down the line, and you get to read about him here in the Gospel of John as Jesus celebrating him for his integrity. You'd be so proud of that. And shoot, I would love to be somebody that Jesus would call a man of complete integrity. And what got that praise was that he wasn't satisfied with what he thought he already knew, but he was willing to actually look into it, to investigate and see for himself. This is 100% what this channel is all about. It's Punk Rock Theologian. Don't just sit back and let somebody else tell you the stuff. Don't assume that you already know the things. I get so many comments of people saying, like, oh, the Bible's a bunch of fairy tales and how can you believe all that stuff? Well, check out the evidence, buddy. Look into it yourself. Don't just take it because some other nitwit on YouTube said it's all made up. And don't believe it just because this particular nitwit on YouTube says that it's real. Look into it for yourself. This is what's interesting. As I got to thinking about it, I can't find anyone else who is celebrated in this same way. And the best I can find is almost the exact opposite. It comes up later in John in chapter 7. We'll just read beginning at verse 45. When the temple guards returned without having arrested Jesus, the leading priests and Pharisees demanded, Why didn't you bring him in? We've never heard anyone speak like this, the guards responded. Have you been led astray too? The Pharisees mocked. Is there a single one of us rulers or Pharisees who believes in him? This foolish crowd follows him, but they are ignorant of the law. God's curse is on them. That part reminds me so much of the people today who act like they're too superior and intellectual to fall for all of this nonsense. But then the focus turns to one person who has personally investigated it. It says, Then Nicodemus, the leader who had met with Jesus earlier, spoke up. Is it legal to convict a man before he's given a hearing? He asked. They replied, Are you from Galilee too? Search the scriptures and see for yourself. No prophet ever comes from Galilee. They're doing the same thing Nathanael had done and saying, Look where he comes from. How can he matter for anything? But Nicodemus had gone, had met with Jesus, had spoken to him face to face. And I suspect that what he was doing here was trying to get these guys to see Jesus face to face. He's like, Well, shouldn't he get a fair trial? Let's bring him in and question him, and you guys can see for yourselves. But instead, we have a crowd who is so convinced that they're right, so certain of their preconceived notions, that they don't even need evidence. They reject him already. And that's the warning. Don't let someone else's ideas, some stories that you've heard, some perspective that you've got on this, get in the way of truth. If you want to pursue truth, you will find Jesus. He specifically said, I am the truth. And that's why I have zero fear in encouraging you to pursue, to use your brain, to dig into it and let God show you himself. If you follow the evidence, open minded and honestly just letting the evidence lead where it leads, it will point you to him. And the key, the thing that it takes, is having the integrity to actually investigate. Don't just go based on what you already think you already know, but look into the evidence, the truth, seek for it, and you will find it. And you don't have to take my word for it. This is what God Himself said in Jeremiah 29:13. He said, if you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. If you're searching for truth, you will find Jesus. He's not hiding from anybody, and you don't need to turn off your brain to accept Him. He's not afraid of your intellect or your questions or your pursuit. Seek truth, seek answers, and find Jesus, and let Him change your life.